There was no accident here.
Where did everybody go?
They didn't go anywhere. You did. There are countless other realities. Imagine everything you have ever wanted. 1,000 versions of you in 1,000 different worlds all working for me.
I found this fascinating, and I feel like I need to watch it like 17 more times, just like you need to read the Bible like 100 times to fully understand anything. So maybe talk to me a little bit about The Shift.
Yeah, so The Shift is a movie in which a man, played by Kristoffer Polaha, pretty ordinary dude, except for he's just devastatingly handsome. He is having trouble in his marriage and at his job, and he has a dark encounter with a mysterious stranger who calls himself the Benefactor. And the Benefactor, their confrontation doesn't go so well. Kevin ends up banished to a dark, tyrannical parallel Earth where he fights to get back to his world and the woman that he loves. And of course, based on that description, I'm sure you can guess that it's inspired by the Book of Job. That's a joke. It doesn't necessarily sound like that, but I promise that
wasn't Job set in the multiverse?
Right? Wasn't Job set in the
travel to the ends of every universe to get back to? But if you know the Book of Job, you're going to know this movie. You're going to understand it. You're going to love the ending. You're going to love all of it. If it's a book that's near and dear to your heart, which if you're an avid reader of the Bible, someone who's read it 100 times, it's a book that stands out. I remember being a kid, and my mom and dad read me the Book of Job, and I was like, wait, so God let the devil do what? And he did what? And he lost his wife and his kids and his cattle and his servants and all of it. And then he got it back, and he was cool with the new, he was cool with the, it was all good. It was a confounding story, but then don't we find that life is often like the Book of Job?
Often confounding.
We find ourselves in situations where we're like, why would God allow this? Or why is this happening to me? And why am I having to battle cancer? Or why did my house just get foreclosed on? Or why am I addicted to painkillers? Or whatever the struggle is. And what you have is this character in Kevin who is pushing through the trauma and the grief and the trials and the tribulations with endurance, perseverance, hope, and faith. And I think if people can walk away with those lessons from this movie, then Brock and I have done our jobs. It's a gorgeous story, and I'm so proud of it.
Some of my most favorite scenes are opposite Neil, and we're seeing you two go at it, one volatile, one calm, then it shifts, just this dance that the two of you have as it's good versus evil kind of verbalized. Maybe talking a little bit about what some of those scenes together was like.
Neil would say we were like two boxers in a ring or two athletes on the field. It was kind of like having rocket fuel. I showed up my first day set for a 9-page scene with Neil McDonough, who's got a resume as long as my arm, and he's an amazing actor, and he's a great he's a very competitive guy, and you know that there's this idea of like, I'm going to do this. Are you going to be able to keep up with me? And so it was a fun challenge, and I think my job on day one was to really just listen and to react as organically and as authentically and as naturally as I can. And being a Christian, the idea of praying in a moment of temptation, I just thought was beautiful, because I don't think that we've ever seen that on screen before. I honestly don't think we've ever seen a character being tempted by the devil and crying out to Jesus and being like, Lord, I don't know. I don't know how, but I need you to save me. And I'm asking for help. And then all of a sudden help is given, but it's never what we want, or it's not what we're necessarily asking for, but it's like, God's got this plan. Right. So it's cool. And I love that he said it in a multiverse, because have you ever had a conversation with someone where you're like, yeah, you said you were going to pay the bills, and the other person's like, what are you talking about? I never said that. I've had that conversation with my wife. I know you've had it. And when I read that in the script, I was like, oh, it's because there's a multiverse. And it's not some silly saccharine Marvel superhero multiverse of like, rah, rah, rah. This is like, what if you made a different choice, and now there's a new version of you that's made the opposite choice in a world that otherwise is identical? and then there's a shift from that world and a shift from that world, and then you've got this multiverse of almost identical worlds. It's a really fascinating idea, and like you said, it's a gorgeous movie. You got to see it like 10 times.
Yeah,
Well,
please.
that's one of the things that I thought was so interesting, is that it just kept underscoring the fact that you have a choice, and choices have repercussions, whether those are positive or negative. I mean, even from the opening sequence where, the whole life is planned out. Should we even have this drink, right? Like, the idea of everything that you do can cause a different reaction. Brock, maybe unfold a little bit what that looked like, even taking it from the director's standpoint.
It's a million choices every single day on set. The director's job really is to problem solve and make decisions. That's what it comes down to. And so, in creating this story, especially this is an original story. This isn't based on something else, except for being inspired by the Book of Job. And so there's 100,000 different ways to tell this story, and landing on the right path and the right vision and the right way to do it and the right actors. Any one of those elements doesn't go right, it could all go wrong. And to me, that is evidence that there was a bit of a divine hand on this project. That there's no way this movie ever should have happened. It's been an 8-year journey. I started off with 0 connections and 0 idea of how to even make a movie, and then it became this. And that just doesn't happen because I'm so smart or because I'm so talented, because I'm not either of those things. That happens because this is something that he wants, and it's just our job to follow.
Kelly, I'm sure you have other questions, and I want to make sure you have time to ask those questions. But Brock just made me think of something. You do a movie, you do your best to act in it, and for Kevin Garner, my role he's in so much of the movie that I'm nervous about what people are going to think, and I hope I did a good job, and I'm insecure about, like, are people going to like the performance or whatever. And it's interesting because the job wasn't mine. Before, I didn't even know the shift existed until suddenly it was a call from Ken Carpenter, said, "Hey, do you want to do this thing?" I did the job. The talent isn't mine. So God's hand is in this thing all along. He brought the script to me. He brought the gifts that I have to be able to do the work. So whenever I get nervous, I'm like, Lord, it wasn't mine to begin with. It's not mine now. You're going to do with it what you will. So it really is when you can trust in God that he's got your back, and that you're in his pocket and he's taking care of you, all of a sudden it becomes a totally different viewpoint. It's such a pleasure to just go through the day and be like, yeah, the movie's going to do exactly what the movie is supposed to do. And it's going to touch the lives of the people who are supposed to see it.
And I appreciate, Chris, you sharing that story, because that's one of the things that I think the film does so well, is it reminds us that the devil plays on our innermost securities. He knows what buttons to push. He knows what to tell you to maybe get you to possibly trust him more than you trust God. And, I'm glad that I wasn't in the movie having to deal with that, but we are dealing with it in our own lives.
Our own lives, right?
Yeah. Right?
There now, Kelly, it's so funny. Real quick, it's this idea of, do you listen? The movie is about relationship, and who do you want to be in relationship with? And the devil wants you to be in a relationship with him. That's all he wants. And God is saying, I'm right here, and you can have a personal relationship with me through Jesus. And there's this extraordinary adventure that awaits, but it just depends on what story you want to believe in. And here we are, we're all Kevin's, kind of going like, well, and I love it when it's the unworthy and the I'm ashamed, or I'm all this stuff. But what about when Satan comes in with the pride and the, well, why would they? And you're better than this, and all of the ways that Satan uses to get us off of the track of, you know what I mean? So this movie, it's just an incredible reminder of how to stay on track.